just want to like go through and recap it all. So, starting out, I'm gonna go through my notes. The first thing was I played the wizard or sorcerer wizard, because I love wizards. The first thing was the game immediately made me go through the story mode before I could move on, and it wouldn't let me increase the difficulty. And I did not like that one bit because the game was so easy. And if I was a casual player of the game and like not somebody who was like, I gotta force through this, but if I was somebody was like, hey, come play this game for a couple hours, I would have never picked it up again because I just did not enjoy how easy the game was for the first 3 acts to 3.5 acts. After that, the game got better in Act 4 and 5 once I could push up. Thank you very much, Kieran. Once I could push up the difficulty, it actually became a little more fun. Bye, everybody who's heading out. But I don't know, like the Malthael fight or whatever, did I say his name right? That was actually a fun fight. I really liked that fight. But until that point, the game was just like easy. And I did not like that. I would not have come back to it if people didn't tell me, you got to push through to the end. Once I got to level 70, everybody was like, all right, now you're at the point where the game is going to be fun. This is like where the game starts. Which I don't really like games where they start at the end of the whole story. But regardless, I'm not trying to be biased here because I appreciate Diablo 2, appreciate Diablo 3 for what it is. But I'm just trying to give my opinion, my feedback, where I stand on it, where it was going through it. So once I got to 70, I started rifting, and that was actually addicting for about 3 to 4 days. I actually enjoyed it in kind of the lower rifts and the lower stuff, where I was running around, like, being able to mess around with stuff and kind of whatever, right? I was messing around with skills and items, and it didn't really matter. I was having a lot of fun doing kind of that stuff and just bouncing around and going crazy. But as I got up in the rifts, thank you so much, GG. All right, I'm gonna have to kill your thingy. Hold up. Thank you. Because I want to get through this. I'll read that after. So what I wanted to do, I was enjoying bouncing around, but I got to like rift like once I got past like 35 or 40, and kind of continued on from there. It just felt. It got like iffy because it felt like. And I think this goes to the way the gear stacks and everything, but it got like bland, and everything that I was like, I'd go in and the next rift would be like exponentially harder. But the only way to get to that point would be getting this next item, which would do like 500% more damage, and then your damage like exponentially goes up. So instead of doing 20 million damage, now you're doing 100 million damage, and you can clear up to like a few more rifts, and then it gets exponentially harder until you find the next multiplier of it. And I really just didn't like that. That kind of turned me off, I guess, from it, because it was like, it felt like I had to just build in a very specific way to move up through the rifts, or roll with specific items specific ways, and it didn't feel very free, and the skill builds felt very set and built in, and whatnot, with your items as well, which we'll get into that more. So another note I have is the variety seemed kind of boring after a bit, because all spells felt the same, and I don't like that. Like in Diablo 2, spells feel so different for me. Like if I'm out here and I'm casting Blizzard versus this versus any spell, Frost Nova, how it interacts with everything around me feels very different. The different elements of the spells, my cold versus my fire versus my light, feels very different. And there just feels like there's a lot of variety between my spells and monster spells. Souls shoot this beam of lightning, and it deals lightning damage, and I know it's lightning damage, and I try and avoid that, whatever not. And I just felt like in Diablo 3, whenever something's off cooldown, I'm basically spamming it, right? I'm just jumping around everywhere and basically spamming all of my spells. And especially with the Meteor Tau Rasha set, like you want to have all 4 spells always active so you get the bonus. So you're just like constantly burning everything, and you don't really care what's hitting what. You don't really care if you're dropping a Blizzard or a Frozen Orb or an Arcane Orb or whatever the heck you want anywhere, because you just like everything hits everything. There's no resistances. There's no, like I go right here. These guys are immune to lightning. Those guys are immune to lightning. Those guys, we're getting a lot of lightning immunes in this area. But regardless, like we know, like certain guys are immune to lightning, certain guys are immune to cold, certain guys are immune to fire, some are immune to both. And it makes you kind of have to either avoid certain monsters because they're immunities, because you literally can't kill them, or certain monsters are going to deal different damages to you because your resistances are various and bad and whatever not. And so it just feels like all of that gets like thrown out the window. Instead, you just get this, everything spams everything. All the monsters spam all their attacks. You spam all of your attacks, and there's just a giant cluster of all of this. And there's so much stuff, but none of it matters, right? None of the clump really matters, except you're like, oh, there's those little like orbs with the beams. Those do damage. I should avoid those. Like just things like that. You just kind of know because that'll one-shot me. Let's see what else. Kind of going into I don't really care. I don't care about the damage type from a monster. I just know that thing does a lot of damage. But once again, it's not like a soul does a lot of damage. I can stack light res gear and light absorb gear and handle the soul better. You just are like, oh, that does a lot of damage and he'll one-shot me. And that's it. It just felt like that was kind of accepted. Yep, that's just a one-shot monster. And that seemed to be kind of a lot of that instead of like resistances and kind of building and versus different monsters and changing your gear up and things like that. Like I love in Diablo 2 that I sometimes come back to my stash, go to my stash and switch my gear out so I can have better resistances for a specific area, right? Like in Diablo 2, I get Rao runes for my helmet to add fire resist before I go to Act 4. Otherwise, I'm going to have a massive issue with fire damage because there's a lot of fire damage. So things like that are things that I kind of enjoy about Diablo 2 that I didn't really find in D3. One thing I really hated was that loot sucks. Nobody, like, you don't care about loot. The worst thing was I would go through a rift. Yeah, rifts you find loot, right? Greater rifts you don't. Whichever one it is. I would go through and I would collect all this gear and I would come home and the first thing I would do is go to that blacksmith and just get rid of all of it. Like, if it was rare, magic, whatever, I didn't care. I was like, give me all your crafting materials. And that was just that. Like, I hate that I don't care about those items because there's so much stuff that I really want to care about. Like, all of these things. I mean, this right here. This is a rare ring, not a legendary. It's got faster cast rate, strength, quad res on it. That's something that's really cool to me. And I love when I can go and find rare rings, rare circlets, rare boots, even magic stuff sometimes. I was using magic boots for a long time because they had high magic find on them. Things like that. Rare amulets, rare health. Like, the best gear that I've had, the highest selling best gear has been rare items that are very unique in their own way because you cannot find anything else like it. And so that's something that I've always like enjoyed, and it's nice when the loot becomes more exciting. Like I was never excited for loot in Diablo 3. Even when I'd go and like spend blood shards or go crafting, it was just like ding 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 ding. You just like spend it all really quick, and it's like, oh, didn't get the legendaries. Like throw it all away for craft materials, and that's all you did. And it really lost that excitement piece of Diablo 2, where you're like identifying like that circlet, and you're like, come on, +2 source, +20 faster cast rate, 30 faster unlock resistance, strength, like so many mods that you're hoping for and all this cool stuff, re-rolling charms to try and get, whatever it is. Like, there's so many cool things like that I felt like got lost. And I just love, like, I just did 40 hours of magic finding where I was running through garbage stuff trying to find every item in the game. And it was a ton of fun because with that I was still picking up other stuff and getting excited for the other loot. Like the magic find in this felt more exciting to me. Let's see. Find stuff not rewarding. Went over that. I hate that gear and skills are tied together. We kind of touched on it earlier, but I'm going to say it again. I hate that your gear and skills are tied together so much. For instance, if I want to be an Archon wizard, now I have to have the Chantoto's orb and wand, whatever it is. Like, if you don't use those, you're not going to advance higher in your rifts. I hate that. I hate that when I'm out there fighting monsters and my gear breaks, I do no damage all of a sudden, and I have to go repair my gear. And I know you're like, oh, your gear shouldn't break, Mr. Llama, whatever it is. But I don't feel like that's the point. The point is, I love that my damage is based on my skills. So, like, look at this. I do 2k damage right here. Now I take this off, I do 1800 damage. So losing a Shaco, or not having the Shaco, doesn't really make a difference. It makes a small difference, and these pieces all add up, for sure. But it doesn't make a difference of like, oh, now I lose 500 million damage because I don't have this one piece that adds 100,000 on, you know, like 100 million damage to it because it's 1,000% extra. And so that goes back to the exponential damage kind of ruins the game in this way almost, I believe. Because right now I could kill stuff naked in hell, and it's really fun that I can do that. I can run around in complete garbage gear and just kill stuff naked, and I'm super weak, obviously, and it's very difficult. But I would at least be able to kind of do that. And I felt like with D3, okay, you know, I'm in my Greater Rift 57, whatever it is, with my gear. If I lose one piece of gear, that's like, you know, the meteor boots or whatever, I could literally never finish this rift without getting massive upgrades on my other stuff or whatever it is. I mean, you guys get the idea. But I'm just saying, like, this shouldn't be so affected by this stuff. This stuff should just add and help in certain ways. Oh, life and mana and some magic find and some skills. That's great. But if I don't have this, I'm still fine. Like, my character can still do stuff. It's just going to be more difficult. And the game progresses better, it feels like, in that way, as opposed to just having to have the perfect gear and then slowly just moving up gear by gear level. Like, I did not like that one bit. Let's see. And then I guess the overall sense goes back to there's so much stuff, but none of it really feels important. Items and damage and your fighting and all the spells and everything. So much is like big numbers, big items, gold, and everything's exploding all over the screen. And at the end of the day, it's like, oh, none of this really matters. Like, all the gear you find, you just trash anyways. All the gold you find, well, you have infinite gold, basically. All the spells that are cast, nothing is immune. There's no monster that's, like, immune to cold and fire. So you literally can't even fight it with your cold fire. Like, none of your spells, it's all just a lot of stuff. And that was kind of my sense of it as I played through it. And I know I'm not a master of Diablo 3 by any means. I'd say I'm a master of D2. I have D2 down pat, but Diablo 3, like I said, I made it to 57 Greater Rift, somewhere around there, maybe 60, whatever it was. And then I just didn't care to really move on with it. But I feel like that's kind of an issue in itself, and I hear a lot of people that are like, I go back for the ladder, after a week or two, I'm done. And then I want to go play something else. And I understand that, and I feel that sense. And that's kind of the sense that I got from it, is that, like, it was fun for a week and a half, and then I was like, okay, I want to do something else. And, you know, so I come back to Diablo 2. And Diablo 2, I could just play forever. It's just, like, a beautiful game that works through. Difficulty increases. There's so much stuff. And even when you get down to, like, grindy stuff at the end, there's still a different feeling that at least brings me back to it that I just couldn't quite find with Diablo 3. So I'm not trying to throw D3 in the trash. I think it fits more with the World of Warcraft scene, which I never played World of Warcraft. Or I did, but I didn't like World of Warcraft, so I think that kind of fell over into my Diablo 3 likes and dislikes as well. But that's just kind of how it was for me, I guess. That's kind of my Diablo 2 versus Diablo 3 feeling, or I guess my feeling playing through Diablo 3, and why I enjoy Diablo 2 more, and kind of go back to Diablo 2. So I respect people who play Diablo 3. I know a lot of people love it. I'm sure there's people who grind, are at Greater Rift level 90, and they're like, you just haven't got deep enough into the game, and that's very possible. But I didn't want to get that deep. Like, that was the problem. The game didn't suck me in to go there, where it was like, oh, everything's great. Like, I don't want to have to get deep into this game that I'm not interested in for a bit before it actually starts to grab my interest. That shouldn't be how a game works, I guess. So that was kind of my issue for it. But, once again, that's just my opinion. I've played Diablo 2 for my entire life, basically. So I love Diablo 2. And I tried Diablo 3 out, and I just couldn't. I've had a different experience, but I just couldn't get quite into it as much as I was hoping. And maybe it's better with playing with friends and stuff like that. I could see it being a better friend game and whatever. But that's my experience of Diablo 3. I just kind of wanted to get my thoughts out there for you guys, because I know some people were asking about it after I played.